Welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody feels recharged after lunch and ready for more dynamic discussions. We have asked our panelists to keep their presentations and speeches as short as possible so that we can have time for as much audience participation as time will allow. This next session will be discussing agriculture and water security, and in countries like Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon, securing sustainable food supplies and ensuring water security are key challenges. In Lebanon and Jordan, about a quarter of the population is actually involved directly or indirectly in the agriculture sector, and in Egypt, it employs about 30% of the workforce, including many women. It's a very important livelihood for many women across the Arab world. These countries, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and others, are net importers of food, and they have growing population. And along with the rest of the region, they face growing challenges from climate change. So what role can technology play in addressing these challenges? How much investment is needed to reach self-sufficiency and reduce food imports? And what specific areas are ripe for partnerships with UK firms? Well, who better to discuss that and lead our discussion than Sir Peter Kendall, CEO and Chairman of the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, who was also previously the President of the NFU, the National Farmers Union, which an organization many of you living here will be familiar with. Sir Peter, I know that you've talked about how leaving the European Union will have an enormous impact on agriculture here in the UK, and that you're focused on maximizing the opportunities offered by Brexit. I know that we want to hear about that, but we also want to hear about where the Arab world can fit in. So I turn to you, Sir Peter.
Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. And certainly, when those words were said about the exciting opportunities of the world post-Brexit, excuse me, we thought it might have been a simpler process to leave the European Union, and certainly the politics today are very confusing, and it makes thinking about the opportunities of the future really hard to contemplate and actually plan for. I'm chairing the session this afternoon, the first session. I'm mainly, I consider myself to be a farmer. My farm 15 miles away from Cambridge. My great-uncle wrote an authoritative book on land and irrigation and water management. And in his introduction, in the very early days of the 1930s, when farming was having a tough time, he wrote that learning to manage water on my farm is the way I'm going to keep my children out of the poorhouse, was how he started his introduction to his book. I'm much more upbeat than that. I think there's massive opportunities from learning to use technology. The video that came in the introduction talking about how investment and business can come together, I don't think that's ever been more relevant to the agriculture industry. We have a Secretary of State in the United Kingdom, Michael Gove, who talks enthusiastically about the fourth agricultural revolution, how we use combined data, artificial intelligence, robotics, to find new ways of managing precious resources and inputs into agriculture. I'm absolutely convinced that this is a really exciting and important industry that needs to attract the brightest young people, both as investors but also as practitioners, because we face some massive challenges with climate change, population growth, water scarcity, and if we don't pull together the best investors, the best minds, we aren't going to meet this challenge, and we won't be addressing really important needs of the world's population. So I'm going to say enough there and hand over, if I could, straight away to our first speaker, Haifa, Kaylani. Well, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, personally and as founder chairman of the Arab International Women's Forum, as well as a board member of the Arab British Chamber of Commerce, I'm honored to be with you today on this very special occasion of the Arab British Chamber of Commerce Economic Summit for 2019. As a development economist focused on gender, economics and economic security challenges within the MENA region and internationally, I am delighted to be participating in this distinguished panel to share my insights on critical development challenges of agriculture and water security in the Arab world and reflect on the importance of trade, entrepreneurship and investment in these vital sectors. Distinguished guests, allow me to share a few reflections on agriculture and economic security at the outset. In 2015, 795 million people in the world faced severe food insecurity. Today, feeding the growing world population of 9 billion by 2050, and with a rise in food consumption as a result of economic growth, a 70% increase in global food production is required to keep up with demand. Furthermore, water is crucial for food security, as it is an important component of the agricultural sector. This natural resource is being subjected to unsustainable exploitation, leaving nearly 80%, and I repeat, 80% of the global population today water insecure. Its looming scarcity in the Middle East is a huge challenge that requires immediate response. According to FAO, accessible fresh water in the region has fallen by 2/3 in the past 40 years. It now amounts to 10 times less per capita availability than the world average, underscoring the need for significant overhaul of farming systems and methods. Also, recent studies by FAO show that higher temperatures may shorten the growing seasons in the region and reduce agricultural yield. Moreover, the population of the Arab world is expected to reach 487 million by 2025. Consequently, in order to sustain the growing population, food production also has to increase in our region by 70%. In addition, food and water insecurity are increasingly being linked to displacement and conflict, with real-time examples affecting, sadly, many parts of the MENA region. In Jordan and in Lebanon, the Syrian refugee population is placing increasing pressure on the agricultural sector and food supply networks, as well as on our scarce water resources. Distinguished guests, agriculture is crucial and fundamental for economic growth. In 2014, according to the World Bank, it accounted for 1/3 of global gross domestic product. Agriculture can help reduce poverty, raise incomes, and improve food security for 80% of the world's poor who live in rural areas and work mainly in farming. Agricultural development is one of the most powerful tools to end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and could feed a projected 9.7 billion people by 2050. Hence, supporting and investing in sustainable agriculture and the rural economy could go a long way to contributing to the realization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SDGs, in the Arab region. Specifically, Goals 1 and 2 on poverty and zero hunger, Goal 3 on good health and well-being, Goal 6, clean water and sanitation, Goal 8, decent work and economic growth, Goal 10, reducing inequalities, Goal 11, building sustainable cities and communities, and of course Goal 13 on climate action. However, the region's limited available water is contributing to rising concerns about food security. In our region, agriculture is the largest consumer of freshwater resources. Nowhere in the world are the challenges of water scarcity and food insecurity more pertinent than they are in the MENA region. In some countries of the region, access to water is critically low, with Jordan, for example, being the second poorest country in the world in water resources. Distinguished guests, the MENA region is by no means the only region in the world facing these challenges, but for our region, reviving the rural economy will require significant entrepreneurship and investment in agriculture. This is where the solution lies. Allow me to elaborate. We are witnessing firsthand that progress towards meeting the many objectives of the SDGs is being strengthened significantly by small-scale entrepreneurs, SMEs, and social enterprises. They play a vital role in agriculture and should play a vital role in agriculture. Therefore, we cannot address opportunities for entrepreneurship, innovation and investment without first duly recognizing the pivotal role of women as key contributors to rural economies worldwide. FAO data shows that women comprise 43% of the agricultural labor force globally, and in our region, the percentage is 45%. Throughout the MENA region, women are involved at every level in the agriculture chain. Producers, entrepreneurs, engineers, researchers, and policymakers, with a high number of households in the Arab world led by women solely dependent on agriculture. But despite the vital role that women play in this sector, women in agriculture and rural sectors still face the most significant gender disparity, a situation the ILO describes, and I'm quoting, the ever-present danger and challenge. By ensuring that due attention is paid to the voices of women and youth in rural and informal sectors, we can drive equitable economic prosperity and social transformation in the MENA. Entrepreneurship has unprecedented power to bring young people into the sector, to apply their love for and interest in food, in farming, and sustainability towards creating and innovating the tools and the technologies and the new models that will really make this sector flourish. This is a pivotal moment as the conditions for success in entrepreneurship, in agriculture, and the rural economy are ripe. Investing in agriculture can also spark exciting discoveries of new technologies and techniques that can support sustainable agriculture in the region. Distinguished guests, growth in agriculture trade is extremely promising in the MENA region, which makes the sector ripe for investment. Agricultural exports constitute a substantial share of total exports for the region, but the relative share of high-value crops with exporting potential is still very low. This represents a missed opportunity for the region, which is being mentioned is incongruent with the region's clear competitive advantage for producing fruits and vegetables exportable to areas where they are only produced for a few months of the year. Another clear advantage for the region is its proximity to European markets. With population growth in mind, governments across the region are taking steps to improve local production, to invest in and also expand large-scale irrigation, to support intensive production of high-value crops, as well as to invest in technology and innovation in farming. This is absolutely crucial. To conclude, a key international food policy research report titled Agriculture and Economic Transformation in the Middle East and North Africa identifies agriculture as a strategic sector for ensuring sustainable economic development, given its potential for creating and maintaining jobs, implementing agricultural policies in accordance with environmental concerns, food security, and poverty reduction. For all of us in the MENA region, economic growth and security are intrinsically linked with human security, prosperity, and social cohesion. The Arab world needs a thriving rural economy to meet the challenges of youth unemployment, food insecurity, water scarcity, women's underrepresentation in the economy, and to alleviate hunger and poverty in our region. This is fundamental for growth and, with it, security in the MENA region. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much indeed for a presentation, Haifa. I don't want to go through the CVs in great detail. You've got them in your packs. So we'll move on to make best use of our time to our next speaker, Cornelia Richter. Cornelia.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure indeed to be here today, and I would like to thank the British government and also the British Arab Chamber of Commerce for this invitation, for organizing this important event. For those not familiar with my institution, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, we call it IFAD, I would like to share a few information. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations and the only international financing institution within the UN. And our mandate is particularly dedicated to ending hunger and poverty in rural areas of developing countries. Our organization is headquartered in Rome, where also FAO and WFP, the World Food Programme, are located. So we have a very close cooperation among these three Rome-based agencies. And among these agencies, we are sharing the vision that we have to ensure food security and that we have to combat hunger. And even more, with looking at the catalogue of the SDGs, we are also addressing SDG 6, which is to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. For more than 40 years, IFAD has focused exclusively on poor rural people living in the most remote areas, investing in them to improve their food security, nutrition, raise their incomes, and strengthen their resilience. The Organization of the Oil Exporting Countries, OPEC, took a leading role in our foundation 40 years ago, and they remain important members and partners in development. So IFAD has a very long and close relationship with the Arab culture and the Arab states. Today we have 177 member states, and in 2018 our portfolio of investments is valued at $7.1 billion, reaching $15.2 billion, including also contributions from our partners. Our operations span more than 90 countries throughout Asia, Central and South America, Africa, Europe and the Middle East. To give you a glimpse of our footprint in the Arab states in 2017, IFAD's projects and programs in the region amount to almost $578 million, with grants of $3.1 million to Jordan and Somalia. Today, I would like to highlight three key topics to guide our thinking. The first is something I'm sure you will all agree on. We need to increase investment in sustainable, efficient and equitable water resource management. I don't have to tell you that water is a precious, non-renewable resource and that climate change and pollution are growing threats. At the same time, the world's population is increasing, including in the Arab states. During the last 50 years, the population of the Arab region increased 3.7 times more than any other major world region. Water availability in the Arab region is a critical issue, with 5% of the world's population having access to merely 1% of the world's water resources. Water scarcity threatens the livelihoods of countless people in the Arab region, particularly in the rural and poor communities, and a significant part of these people has no access or little access to drinkable water. Remote areas with inadequate water and sanitation are especially vulnerable, and many Arab countries have average per capita water availability rates below the World Health Organization's threshold for severe scarcity. This means that Arab states face a water supply emergency that demands an urgent and coordinated response. Every country in the region is experiencing groundwater depletion, and agriculture is struggling to compete for water with industry and other sectors. There is no time to waste. We must act now at IFAD in recognition of the urgency of climate change, not just in the Arab region, but globally. We have integrated climate change mitigation and adaptation into all our investments. This includes investing in climate-smart research and investing in standalone projects. It also includes assisting partner countries in adding climate change adaptation and mitigation into government development plans. And it includes assisting partners, countries in mobilizing additional resources for adaptation and mitigation. Looking back at the cause of severe water scarcity in Egypt, I would like to highlight that water savings in agriculture are essential to the Egypt National Water Resources Plan, with a view towards achieving water savings by increasing field-level irrigation efficiencies. IFAD introduced modernized on-farm irrigation in Upper Egypt through the On-Farm Irrigation Development Project. To do so, the project focuses on allowing farmers to have access to improved on-farm irrigation infrastructure and to enhanced water management practices for a more equitable distribution of water, particularly for tail-end users. For example, this project encourages users to get more involved in sustainable irrigation management through its 320 water user associations. As a result of the specific project interventions in an arid environment, the project contributed to reduced water losses by improving irrigation infrastructure of some 8,000 hectares of farmland. It also helped to improve the water quality at the tail end of the rehabilitated or newly constructed 250 tertiary canals. This further resulted in greater water availability for some 20,000 farming households. Lastly, the project's intervention in modernizing the existing water distribution system led to greater resilience to climate change through the ultimate reduction in evapotranspiration. My second message is that we need to invest in innovation and accelerate research to tackle water scarcity and support young people and women. IFAD is committed to investing in research to promote top-notch innovations in a broad range of sectors, including water scarcity in marginal environments. We have close partnerships with the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, the International Center for Agricultural Research in the Dry Areas, and the Arab Center for the Studies of Dry Zones and Arid Lands. There is a strong and direct link between investment in research and the elimination of poverty and hunger. And it is estimated that every dollar spent on agriculture research produces $9 worth of extra food in developing countries. It was agricultural research that so successfully drove the first green revolution in Asia, and it will be agricultural research that will help us grow enough food to feed nearly 10 billion people in 2050. Today, we are wiser than we were at the start of the Asian Green Revolution. We know that effective agricultural research must be sensitive to the environment, because we cannot afford the long-term damage to the environment and local species that tragically followed the extraordinary gains of the first Green Revolution. And agricultural research must also be pro-poor if it is truly meet its potential for development, with a particular focus of youth and women. In every region of the world, women are most likely to be more food insecure than men. Yet women make up, we have heard it, 43% of the agricultural labor force in developing countries, but in the Arab region, it's only 20%. And I think it is very important that we focus on this particular target group. Same holds true for youth. Water scarcity and climate change disproportionately affect youth and women, and so we will target also our investments particularly for these groups. My last message is that we need to invest in and learn from small-scale farmers. Small-scale farming provides more than 80% of agricultural production and holds nearly 85% of agricultural lands in the Near East and North Africa. Research shows that small-scale farming is highly effective. Small-scale farmers often go to the extra mile in order to ensure a successful farming business. But they can't do it alone. They need infrastructure, access to financial services and markets. And that's where also IFAD comes in, and we are partnering also with the private sector and with other organizations. I will leave out some of these examples, and I would like to leave it with, and to end with the message. IFAD makes itself available and would like to send a very strong message here to the private sector that we are very willing to partner not only with governments but with the private sector in future in the Arab region, and we are looking forward to new business models and to new forms of cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Cornelia. Can we move straight on to Yousef, please? Yousef Khalawi, the Secretary General of the Islamic Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture. Thank you very much.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Okay. As a representative of the private sector in the Islamic countries organization, I would like to review the issue of investment and speak about the opportunities brought by the challenges. As we heard in the previous two presentations, there's a lot of the challenges which involve the agricultural sector in Arab countries, especially. We heard some of them, but we believe always that these challenges, that these will bring opportunities. I will review first, as a model of the real status of investment in agriculture. I will review some important agricultural crops in the world and the level of production of the Arab and Islamic countries, the Islamic world, Islamic organization states. You know that all Arab countries are members of the Islamic world organization. When we speak about these states, we mean also and especially the Arab countries. As I said, I will review some crops. For example, in barley, on the level of the most producing world, Turkey is at the 8th rank, followed by Morocco in the 14th level as the most important 20 countries exporting barley in the world. With the cocoa seeds, there is no Arab country which is considered out of the 20 most important producing countries. But we have a number of countries in the Islamic countries. For example, the first country in the world is Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. Indonesia is in the 3rd rank. Cameroon is in the 4th. Nigeria in the 5th rank, and so on. So this shows that a number of the most important countries exporting cocoa in the world are members of. With regard to coffee seeds, we have Indonesia in the 4th rank, Uganda in the 10th rank, and Ivory Coast in the 15th rank. The natural rubber, we have Indonesia, which is in the 2nd rank, Malaysia in the 6th rank, and so on. The production of palm oil, Indonesia is the 1st rank, Malaysia in the 2nd rank, and there's no other Arab countries, but with respect to rice, Indonesia is in the 3rd rank, Bangladesh in the 4th, Pakistan the 10th, and Egypt in the 14th rank, and so on. Out of the total of these crops, because the presentation is not here, I would like to review this. It is clear that there is a lot of Arab countries which are ranked among the most important countries in producing some crops, which are Egypt, Morocco, and Sudan. These countries, with all the challenges available in them, but they are considered today one of the most important producing countries. So how about overcoming? What happens when they overcome these challenges? Egypt, for example, is in producing sugar. It is ranked 16. Pakistan is 5th. Indonesia is number 11, and so on. I will pass these things because of the shortage of time. When we speak about agriculture, we speak about 3 main constituents of agriculture. The water resources, the suitable land, labor, the producing labor or workforce. Also, there was a slide which includes these 3 constituents. So that we know the ranking of the Arab countries. As said before, all Arab countries are classified among the least or the most suffering out of shortage of water in the world. When we look into the most important 20 agricultural countries in the Islamic world, with regard to the resources of water, we see only Iraq as among the 10 countries, for example, Egypt, Morocco, they do not fall in among the countries that have water resources which are reassuring, if you like to express. We only see Iraq there. But when we review the crops, we did not find Iraq among these most important countries regarding crops. So with regard to the first constituent, it's very clear that about the water resources, it is clear that we have a real challenge in all the Arab countries, nearly. With regard to the suitable land suitable for agriculture. In the Islamic World Organization, Nigeria is the first country with regard to the area of the land, followed by Kazakhstan and Pakistan and Kazakhstan. Then Sudan comes in the 6th rank with regard to the land suitable for agriculture. After that comes Morocco as number 9, and then we have Iraq, and then Syria. This is the second constituent of agriculture, which is the land suitable for agriculture. So we have vast areas, and the real and the statistics are on this regard, with regard to the areas of land which is suitable for agriculture, are reassuring to the contrary of the first constituent, which is the water resources, especially the renewable ones. When we come to the third constituent, which is the workforce, or the active workforce in the agricultural sector, I think that unfortunately we don't see any Arab country found among the first 20 countries in the Islamic World Organization, which are 57 states. So this is with regard to constituents. In fact, we have a lot of challenges which can be summarized according to a number of international studies and Arab studies and Islamic studies regarding this issue. There are 7 challenges in addition to what was said before about the non-active workforce in agriculture, and the first constituent, which is the shortage of water resources in many countries. We have, in fact, a number of challenges which I would like to highlight, among which we have to speak about opportunities. One of the most important challenges is the weakness in using agricultural lands. If we look into statistics which show the agricultural productivity of every hectare in Arab countries, we will see that we have a problem. We have weak production if we look into the percentage of production with regard to the areas of land. With regard, we have another challenge, which is also in general the weak production, and this results to a big extent from the first constituent, but it's also coming from other constituents. So weak productivity is something prevailing. The use of modern methods in agriculture and also in irrigation is a real challenge, which is there. As we heard, there's a big percentage of agriculture comes from small farmers. Every one of them owns a piece of land either or inherited from his family, and these farmers don't have enough potential to enter new modern methods of agriculture or in irrigation systems as well. We have a real challenge also with regard to the insurance of the agricultural sector. Many countries don't have insurance facilities related to the agricultural sector. There is another challenge, which is weakness of investment, as said by the previous speaker. It is weak investment in agricultural research. This is very clear. And the last challenge is a challenge coming after the phase of agriculture, which is storage and suitable storage for crops. This is related to small farmers, as we heard, who represent a big segment in the agricultural sector in the Arab countries. In fact, most of these challenges can be summarized in that the success today depends on good management. So the agricultural sector in the Arab world needs good governance or management. The management of resources is there in many industries. By good governance, the people can overcome the shortage in these natural resources. If we look into other things, new technology has developed a lot, but the development in the agricultural sector in the Arab world was not in line with them because of the weakness in investments, whether from the government or from the private sector. In spite of the fact that many Arab countries are classified as agricultural countries, however, the investment in this sector is very weak. And therefore, I'm very delighted that it's one of the scarce opportunities to speak about agriculture during seminars and conferences of investment and business. When we speak mostly about an investment or business conference, then the people speak about most sectors except agriculture. So I take this opportunity to thank the organizers to focus this session to talk about the agricultural sector. So good governance comes from effective investment. Effective investment comes from two sectors, the public sector and the private sector. The private sector needs stability, in the countries, so that it will be able to invest and take the risks. It needs good systems and good so that this sector can be attractive. Why do people go to the other things? They take agricultural land and they change their licenses into commercial and residential land, because the investment here has clear investment, clear systems. It might be short-term or medium-term, while investment in the agricultural sector is always a long-term one. The agricultural investment are the strongest, are the most needy for stability in the systems and investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Yousef. I'm going to move straight on to Faraz Hassouna, Director of TMP Worldwide, who's got to introduce a short video.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers of the summit for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about some of the issues that I'm very concerned about, as many of you are as well, which is water shortages in the Middle East. It's a real crisis. I wanted today to shed some light on some of the issues that I've come across throughout the years, and maybe also present to you some of the solutions that are available to address some of these issues today. Thank you.
When you woke up this morning, chances are the first thing you did involved water. Taking a shower, brushing your teeth, making a cup of coffee.
There is less and less water coming down from the mountains. There are shortages of water for agriculture in a lot of areas. Farmers lose land because they don't have enough water for their crops. There are problems with water supplies in some areas where the reservoirs are low.
We use a lot of water, but some of us more than others. An American uses 570 liters a day, a Saudi Arabian 192 liters, a Malian just 20.
The population has more than doubled in the last 2 decades and currently stands at 80 million, and they use a lot of water.
The global water crisis is just around the corner, so we have to start by reducing our consumption at a personal level, but also in water-heavy industries like agriculture.
But the main factor is water-intensive agriculture. 93% of the country's freshwater resources are drained by the sector.
It comes as no shock when talking about water scarcity that a country in the Middle East would be water scarce.
So more and more countries and regions are turning to desalination for their water supply.
Saudi Arabia has long relied on technological means to overcome its natural deficiencies. The largest user of desalination in the world, it currently relies on a capacity that is not as efficient as it could be.
There are close to 19,000 desalination plants in the world, processing 15% more water than a year ago. Saudi Arabia has the most. The kingdom processes 12 million cubic meters of water a day.
It's an environmental issue that's become a thorny political problem. Drought in Iran. At the start of this year, Iranians took to the streets to protest inflation and corruption.
Looking historically, Riyadh somewhat shot themselves in the foot with previous policies. Their agricultural policies of past decades sought for self-sufficiency, which required large amounts of irrigation and thus large amounts of water consumption, something that Saudi Arabia did not have the resources to support long term.
In addition to being expensive, desalinating water can disturb the natural ecosystem by killing millions of fish eggs and larvae. It's also an energy-consuming process.
Water problems or ecosystem problems or environmental problems are the product of bad management over decades. We are the ones who have created this situation, because a lot of people try to blame the problem on climate change and take no responsibility, and don't want to be liable for the bad decisions they have made.
The consequences are increasingly felt. Dust and sandstorms, rationed water, and fewer crops. Iran's droughts are a politically sensitive issue that go all the way to the top.
We also face drought in some parts of our country, which is still ongoing, and we hope that the bounty of the Almighty could make up for it in the spring.
That being said, desalination remains a key part of the Saudi strategy. It does require a major investment, approximately $30 billion over the next 15 years to actually meet the total needs. But as long as oil prices remain low, the budgetary constraints are going to remain in place. And the removal of water subsidies and other policies that would curb consumption have not been met with public approval. They've, in fact, been met with public protest in Saudi Arabia. So it's going to be a long, hard road for Saudi to overcome.
Officials acknowledge things must change. Some are betting on a lifeline, and it's more like a pipeline. 600 kilometers to the east lies Lake Saras in Tajikistan. A massive duct could transfer water from the isolated mountain area to Iran. Many say the plan is simply too complicated and expensive.
The technology is vital to communities who live in dry regions or islands, and some countries have mastered the technique, like Israel. Sandwiched between the Mediterranean and the desert, Israel is home to the world's biggest desalination plant. More than half of the water used in homes, agriculture, and industry come from the sea.
Take some desalinated water. This used to be seawater about an hour ago.
Look closer, though, and you'll notice all these countries have something in common. They're rich, and desalination is expensive.
Qatar has one of the highest per capita incomes in the world, but has a state rich in gas, poor in water, finally stumbled across a challenge that money can't solve.
And as natural resources like farmland and water become scarce, it's on how there might be a solution well underway in the Netherlands.
Just south of The Hague in the Westland region of the Netherlands, miles upon miles of greenhouses are spread across the landscape. They've been built by Dutch farmers as part of a 20-year movement by the country to pursue sustainable agriculture by growing indoors. Dutch farmer Hans Winkel grows tomatoes in 2 greenhouses that cover 20 acres of land. His annual harvest of 2.5 million pounds of tomatoes is more than double the average yield of an outdoor farm. Greenhouses now produce 35% of the country's vegetables, despite occupying less than 1% of its farmland. That by creating ideal growing conditions and maximizing space, it can produce much higher yields, in some cases up to 350 times the yield of a conventional farm of the same size. And part of their work is developing techniques that can be replicated anywhere, even in arid climates like the Middle East or Sub-Saharan Africa.
Next, we continue our week-long look at food security and how climate change is affecting what we produce and how we eat. Tonight's John Miller reports from the tiny Middle Eastern nation of Qatar on inventive ways to get the most out of water in the desert.
From the outside, there's little sign of life in this barren landscape. But take a closer look, and there's a flurry of activity as staff here double up efforts to fill a vacuum in the market caused by a diplomatic dispute in the Gulf.
بين حين وآخر يتجدد النقاش حول قضية الأمن الغذائي في قطر تماما كبقية جيرانها من دول الخليج العربية حيث تقل مصادر المياه وترتفع درجة الحرارة أغلب فصول السنة.
The goal of Peninsula Farms is to be the leader, the market leader in Bahrain in the production of locally grown fresh fruits and vegetables, and hopefully into other lines of business such as fish farming or poultry or some other crops that are more conventional but that we can produce in a new high-tech sort of manner.
It's one of just 1,500 farms in Qatar, and it's turning the Saudi-led blockade, which is choking food imports, into an opportunity.
Peninsula Farms wanted to provide food security to the Kingdom of Bahrain, provide fruits and vegetables that are available to all of the Bahrainis at a moment's notice without the dependency on imports.
Time is running short. Local and international crews work around the clock to put up 10 massive greenhouses on arid desert land the size of 20 football pitches.
We are able to produce high-quality crops, even in the desert.
Cucumbers, tomatoes and aubergines have been high in demand from this farm that sells over 45 products.
One packet, 20 riyal, one more, 100 riyal. No same every day.
During this time, imported food prices have jumped by as much as 5% each year, and the authorities don't like it.
Hydroponics is a very old system. It was hard to build in these hot areas. It involved getting pieces from all over the world, experience as well from all over the world.
It was a huge logistical exercise. We have custom manufactured greenhouses being shipped in all the way from China. Our labor on the ground here is mostly Indian. The management is mostly Bahraini, and then the technical expertise is Egyptian.
But growing food in Qatar is not easy. With summer temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, no natural rivers or lakes, and non-arable desert, farmers have to get inventive. But there are other hurdles. Equipment to maintain climate control doesn't come cheap. The government is subsidizing farmers to adopt more efficient methods to recycle the most precious commodity in the desert, water.
We're using new technology and methods of irrigation on the farms. We are also helping farmers by subsidizing them and giving them loans with less than 1% interest.
طبعا هو يعطي انتاجيه افضل لانك انت نفس الماء اللي تعالجه ونفس الماء اللي تستخدم فيه الاسمده تكرر على النبات كذا مره او كذا يوم.
ما تسحب ماء واجد؟
لا، ما توفر 90% من المياه، توفر 90% من المياه. هذا توفير يعني ما هو سهل يعني 90%.
فطبعا كان دي احد المشاكل الكبيره جدا اللي احنا كنا بنحاول ان احنا نوصل لنتيجه بتقليل الفقد من الميه.
We run a hydroponic farm. The water that feeds the plants has to be drinkable to make grade A produce. This water is continuously reused in our recycling stations.
ان شاء الله اذا اتبعوها المزارعين انها تقلل عليهم التكاليف ويكون مردود المنتج بربحيه لهم عاليه. العمليه منها الافاده منها انها توفر لك في الماء وفي الاسمده وفي نفس الوقت تعطيك محصول جيد وانتاجيه افضل او اكثر. الهيدروبونيك او الزراعه الحديثه، الزراعه المائيه، هي زراعه المستقبل. تقدر تزرع فيها من اصغر محصول الى اكبر محصول، ولها فائده على المزارع وعلى المستهلك.
احنا التشالنج اللي عندنا في قطر بالخصوص هو موضوع المناخ. احنا عندنا مناخ مميز، عندنا رطوبه عاليه وحراره عاليه.
هو مميز سلبا وليس ايجابا طبعا.
سلبا طبعا، ولذلك احنا معركتنا في الزراعه، انا اسميها هذه صناعه الزراعه وليس زراعه، فانا اصنع زراعه.
Most of our food is imported. We import about 90% of that. And so this is our biggest challenge because it's not about access to food, it's really about control.
3 weeks ago, they were about this big, and they've grown to here. The core innovation in the Sahara Forest Project is the integration of technologies. So while many of the individual technologies have been developed elsewhere in the world, they've never been brought together in this way.
Costing €4 million gives an early taste of how far they're willing to go. This is the first crop harvested in recent weeks.
It took just over 2.5 weeks from planting to actually picking the crops. A lot of harvest ready to go, and we're picking in each bay approximately 1,000 cucumbers per day.
It's no surprise then that cucumbers are on the menu at this press conference, a gathering of foreign ministers, partners and project leaders. These are surely among the most expensive cucumbers in the world, but the overall goal was to prove it was possible.
We are short of time. Can we have some questions, please, so to open up the discussion? I think some really strong messages around investment, around the right people, being in possession of land, and how we meet the challenges we face. Have you got a roaming microphone to make sure we can hear the delegates? I've got one hand here, please, and one over there. Can we take the lady in the middle, please, first? Microphone 2 is coming to you now, and then a microphone on the far side as well. Second, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, and allow me to congratulate the Arab-British Economic Summit for choosing such an important topic to discuss today. My question is for the panelists, and you've all mentioned that small-scale farmers are still there. They constitute 80%. But small-scale farmers have difficulty in accessing technology that will help them in water efficiency. What is available to them out there, and how can we encourage the financial sector to lend or provide financial resources for them? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's start with Haifa first about small-scale farmers and access to technology and investment.
Absolutely. If I may take this opportunity to share with you a project which I just launched myself on sustainable agriculture. Having spent a year at Harvard 2 years ago as a development economist focusing on water and security issues, I developed a project on sustainable agriculture in the MENA. I'm launching the first project, the pilot, in Jordan, because it's the second, as we said, it's the poorest country in the world in terms of water resources. While I was at Harvard, I visited the World Bank and I secured a grant. So yes, indeed, you need to start with the funding. And then when I went to Jordan, the government offered the land at a nominal rent, and we are about to start the project in the northern Jordan Valley area. It is a small farm because I believe small is replicable, scalable, doable, and affordable. It is 10,000 square meters. It employs 15, creates 15 jobs. We're introducing technology, hydroponics, in 1/3 of the farm. The other high-tech hydroponics in 1/3, 1/3 low-tech hydroponics, because we want to save water. 60% we will save 60% water, and the third part is traditional farming. So we are training the farmers from what they know what to do into low-tech, into high-tech, and I'm very happy that now we're scaling the pilot with the Ministry of Municipalities in Jordan, which has its own funding, and we're scaling it to other municipalities. So I think there is a lot of opportunity in securing funding, not only from governments, from global institutions, as well as foundations. But we need to set up, really, I found what was lacking in the region that hampered part of the funding. We do not have a law as yet in Jordan, Lebanon, other countries, to set up a social enterprise. Many of the big foundations, like the Soros Foundation, would give you the money right away if you had a social enterprise. We still need to put that legislation in place. But there is a lot of interest.
Faraz, you were cut short. I want to go to Faraz if I could. Please, no, I don't go to Faraz if I could. I don't want to go to everyone every question. I'll come back to some others. You showed lots of, I can see on the video, some really high-tech stuff.
Sorry, guys, I don't know what happened to the video, but anyway, to answer your question, yes, there is a lot of opportunities for small-scale farmers to get into the farming business. She mentioned the hydroponics is a good way to get forward with agriculture because you can address the water shortages, you can control the environment better, You can eliminate the need to add pesticide and provide your family and surrounding and maybe the market with fresh produce every day.
Can I do a very brief answer and then we'll move on?
I think talking about access to technology, we have to think in broader packages. It starts with awareness. Small-scale farmers have to know, and they have to get an overview, what kind of technologies are available and which are affordable. That's where the role of an institution like IFAD comes in, where we are negotiating with government and in many cases even with the private sector, what kind of packages can we offer? Starting with awareness, providing grants and loans, and making sure that this is accompanied by extension. And I think we've made very good progress, particularly in informing farmers with regard to climate-smart technology. Mobile technology helps a lot to adjust inputs according to weather conditions, and this has increased terribly to agricultural productivity.
Can we take the question on the far left, please? Thank you.
My name is Richter. I am an international education advisor. I work in Iraq closely in the past 7-8 years. What I have witnessed firsthand is attitude and mentality of the Arab world, and especially in Iraq, toward excessive use of electricity and water, and not understanding the recycling of the water, and not understanding they don't have to wash every single bit of wall and outside just to waste the water they need. My advice is there any program that we can put it into through the national curriculum, start from primary, not only advising farmers or put a strategic plan for farmers for these primary and secondary education, how do they use the best way of water so the country will not face that sort of shortage they are in. There are water in the country, but it's not used in the best place. Thank you.
Yousef, please, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Iraq specifically has a big problem, which is to do with agriculture. 57 countries out of 57 countries, international cooperation, Islamic cooperation, 51 of those countries increase the agricultural productivity. 6 countries, its agricultural production went down. On top of those countries is Iraq. Iraq faced lots of problems, governmental migration from private sector, and also water problems. Until now, there is no national program which can depend on inside that important country, which suffers from lots of challenges, some of them internal, others external. For example, about Iraq, water resources in Iraq is reassuring, but the danger coming to this country it's coming from other sources outside the country, and the geopolitical danger, high geopolitical danger, that Iraq needs support of international organizations and other foundations specialized, because according to my knowledge till today the country is still trying to achieve stability in all aspects of life, but unfortunately agriculture is one of the sectors which suffered a lot during the previous period in Iraq.
One last question, please. Have we got a question by one, or it's one at the front here, please, I think. Thank you.
I had a question actually, but it was asked. Ibrahim Al-Dajani from Mina Investment. Mrs. Kaylani, talked about hydroponic, and this is one of the areas that really need a lot of regulations and investments. And I presume that IFAD has this in consideration, especially for the sort of the products that could be the agriculture that could be done through the hydroponic. Actually, when we invest on normal farming in addition to the 43% of women being oppressed as peasants under the sun, under the sort of circumstances that we all know. If we go onto the alternative, we put them in the hydroponic, then we put them in a shaded area, and that would help also in minimizing the water, because in hydroponic we only use about 90% of the water. The other fold of the issue, I presume IFAD should educate people on the treatment plants, because apparently there is no circulations in many areas, especially in Egypt. I know that they use, and this being on TV actually, I'm not disclosing a secret, they use the sewage water for the agriculture. So I think IFAD should really do something about the treatment plants recirculation in areas like Egypt or elsewhere. Thank you.
Cornelia.
Yeah, well, you're crashing open gates. That is what IFAD actually is doing, and that's why I'm also stressing IFAD is not just providing finance and investment, they are also providing extension services. And I think this is key, because people have to know how to use these kind of technologies and what kind of risks are also going along with it. So that's why we call it a package program.
Look, I'll make an apology if I could, as I think we need to wrap up. Sorry, I'm sure the speakers can be accessed after the session. Really sorry that we lost the slides and also the video wasn't working properly. For me to come from a fairly flat arable farm near Cambridge and come and listen to the conversations, it's fascinating to me how investment, the right people being in possession of land, but the message I would like to leave, and I'm really conscious that we're sat here in our smart clothes in central London, but we need to find a way of making sure the jobs on the land are interesting, they're rewarding, they make sure that people have good qualities of life, because otherwise we sit there and we face a crisis of the next generation coming in to this industry. And the message we've heard really loud and clear is that as we face climate change, the growing population in those Arab countries, we need really enthusiastic men and women to come and engage and take part in this industry. And if we believe and dismiss farming as being some sort of low-skilled activity, you won't get the innovators, the bright, exciting people to come and take part. So thank you very much indeed for inviting me to have a small input into this session. I'm massively excited by farming around the world. It will be important, but we need to make sure we get the best practitioners. Gentleman wanted to say something very quickly.
نحن لدينا نهري دجلة والفرات. الفرات دجلة تمتد.
Euphrates is coming from Syria and from Turkey, but there is a small arms like Azab. But the problem is the system of water, where the Ministry of Irrigation has a big defect, and Iraq since 1990, after the sanctions on Iraq, Iraq became self-sufficient. After 2003, after the Americans came, what happened is that the immigration changed. It was now from the rural areas into the towns, into cities. The system of waters stopped, and also the FAO is not working. Even those who are working in Iraq are corrupt and bad. So thank you very much for this recommendation. May God bless you.
Thank you for leading our conversation.